Hey there, everybody. Welcome to week 4 here. Kind of wrapping up this sort of first section of 152, laying the framework for the societies circa 1500 and the changes that were taking place between these old worlds and the new worlds. We started with Age of Expansion, looked at the Americas, looked at Asia. Now we're filling in the last sort of section of that, Africa, and then ultimately sort of the next phase of economic integration in the Atlantic world with triangular trade. So, yeah, the lectures on Africa, I kind of wanted to lay out, give you a better idea of Africa as a continent. I mean, on the map, it's a little deceiving the way maps are made. Things in the middle get scrunched, and Greenland's giant. But I kind of tried to show within the lecture there the actual size of Africa. I mean, you can fit entire nations within this continent. So give you a sense that and the other thing is that Africa is not like monolithic. It's not just like one big everyone doing the same thing. There's lots of different regions, a lot of different things going on in different places. So northern Africa has always been part of the Mediterranean world. West Africa, we have evidence of strong centralized kingdoms. Same with sort of Central Africa. And then South Africa, it's got its own world going on down there, and peoples. And East Africa was always very much connected into the Indian Ocean. We've seen that with Vasco da Gama, as when he arrived at Mombasa, and then asked if anybody knew where India was, and somebody from Gujarat was like, "Yeah, I can take you there." So a lot of trading in between all of those. So kind of lays the groundwork for Africa, what it is on the cusp of 1500, and then how it gets integrated into this new emerging economic system that we refer to as triangular trade. Which is a little different than Columbian Exchange. Well, Columbian Exchange is just the moving of different parts. They're just, like Europeans are just bringing horses to the Americas and cows to graze. They're not trading horses and cows for corn. They're taking corn and potatoes and growing those in Ireland and other places, or tomatoes, right? And putting those into cuisines. But triangular trade is the actual economic system that comes out of that. And it's a little more nuanced, and it requires a little more sort of, I guess, purpose, economic systems. Institutions. So the big ones is, and again, it's a triangle. So it's Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Each one has imports and exports in each place. The Europeans is when sort of industrialization starts. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but they're really big into making manufactured goods that can be traded into markets. Things like textiles and pots and pans and finished goods that they're making in these factories. But in order to get those finished goods, they need the resources, right? And the resources are coming from the Americas in the form of raw materials. A lot of that being grown cash crops, things like cotton, tobacco, sugar, right? These crops that you can just grow a bunch of and then make into things. You can make a lot from everyone likes sugar. You controls that. You can make it into molasses. You can make it into rum. You can put it into tea. Right, all these things that sugar comes from. But the problem is they need workers for these plantations, right? And that's where Africa gets integrated into this, where Europeans would trade with these African nations and kingdoms that were there, for slaves, right, to work on these plantations. So that's kind of how triangular trade works, right? And as we see with Odile Equiano's autobiography, a lot of the coastal kingdoms were very prosperous, and they were getting their people, the slaves from the interior of Africa, and they were profiting, trading for guns and money. So these African kingdoms around the coast were profiting from the system, bringing people from the interior and selling them into slavery. The Middle Passage I talk about was sort of this, a lot of people died just getting to the Americas, and then in the Americas, working. And then for a while, it was a lot cheaper to just bring more slaves over than actually keep the slaves alive. So you just kind of work them until they died, and then bring in a fresh bunch. But what this resulted in this sort of last part of this lecture is this African diaspora. The Atlantic world kind of very much became African. or there's integrations within influences of African culture seen throughout the Americas, right? Particularly because a lot of indigenous peoples had been replaced through disease and then later through colonization. So these African communities got established there. If you look at the Caribbean, Brazil, North America, all of these, you can kind of see this what was called the African diaspora, and different elements, linguistic elements, cultural elements, religious elements, right? This fusion of Christianity with African world. So that's really one of the big parts of triangular trade is it's not just the economic thing, but also the cultural side of it as well. So that's the last part that gets us up to 1500. We can move in, sort of moving towards the modern world. We got a few more steps to get through then, and we got to look at some products, which we'll do next week. But anyways, quiz one to wrap all this up. So just kind of take this as like assessment, like student success. This is all the stuff you've learned. You just tell me what you've learned. That's all I'm looking for. Please look at the review guide. There are four parts to this quiz. The first is the maps. You'll be able to see that it's kind of like letters on the map and then the numbers there. So do those. Should make sense on Lamaku. Second one, fill in the blank. There'll be terms. If you can cut and paste them, though, it's sometimes hard to cut and paste on there, but write them out. If they sometimes Lamaku, if it's misspelled or whatever, it'll mark it wrong. Don't worry about that. I'm going to go through and read, and if it's close enough, if I know what you're talking about, I'll give you points for that. Matching, and then the last one, section 3 is matching. Should be pretty straightforward. Terms and definitions, you just match them together. The last part I want to explain a little more. This is where I want you to start thinking about history. Be historians. Start answering these questions of why, sort of big history, big H stuff. So they're called the 5 W's, and I'm going to give you 5 terms. You can pick 3 to choose from. It'll make sense on Lamaku. And for each term, I want you to answer the questions who, what, where, when, and why. The who, what, where, when, I mean, you can use, and this quiz is totally open note. You can pull up your notes from that. You should be able to find them in the PDFs or the PowerPoints. But just kind of get who is this, what is it, where and when. Kind of put those close. Those don't have to be super extensive discussions. Like if it's Christopher Columbus, who is he? He's a sailor. Where? Spain. When? 1492. What went across the Atlantic Ocean? All right. But why? Why are these significant? And that's where I want you to expand in your own words why this figure is significant to world history. I gave an example there on the review guide, so take a look at that. On the Tianos, who are they? Why are they? What I say here? I think I have it pulled up. Oh, it looks like I closed it. Let me just see here. Sorry. 1 second. So I say, the Tianos are significant to world history because they represent the ramifications of the encounters between the old worlds of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the new worlds of the America. The Tianos are the original inhabitants of the Caribbean. So who are they? They were people, and were the peoples. Christopher Columbus, all the things in bold are terms from the review guide. I want you to include at least one term, one accompanying term from the review guide in your 5W answer. If you bold it, that'd be really nice too. Then I talk about at first they worked there, and then they traded with each other, and then the Tianos were enslaved as part of the encomienda system. And the Tianos died. Forced labor Mita system and the introduction of smallpox. I talk about this idea of Columbian exchange and then triangular trade and all the way up in African diaspora. So you can read that over. Yours probably won't be that extensive. I mean, remember I'm the teacher, and so I know I've got this a lot, but do try to kind of expand a little bit out. What is this term? How does it work into world history is really what I'm looking for. So and your quiz is available all day Friday on Lamaku. You have an hour and 15 minutes for it. And just if you have any questions, just let me know. And the other part of it, you have some review terms that are due by tonight. Again, I gave examples of just sort of short, brief definitions that to do. Again, please try to do the definitions based on the course material. Don't just like Wikipedia and cut and paste the first paragraph or whatever AI generates out there. I know, it's there. I understand that, but again, it's kind of like, what are we learning in this course? Is kind of what I'm looking for there. So what have you learned in this course as well is what I'm looking for. So, all right, great. Have a good rest of your week.